damage among the population, we hope that you shall act prudently. Our concern is for the welfare and safety of the people of the Malvinas. This was the message from the Argentine Armed Forces.
April 2nd, 1982. Argentine landing craft cross the dark water toward the beach near Stanley. Marines wade ashore and move on the small British barracks. Within hours, the Royal Marine garrison at Government House surrenders, and word of the invasion reaches Buenos Aires, where crowds are already gathering to celebrate. Before this war ends, close to 1,000 people will be dead. That same week, 9,000 kilometers away, Secretary of State Alexander Haig stands at a podium in the State Department briefing room and tells reporters that the United States remains neutral in the dispute. Photographs and newsreel of that briefing still exist. What was not photographed and stayed classified for years was a White House directive weeks later ordering the U.S. government, in writing, to be supportive of the UK position. Two records of the same spring, one made in front of the cameras, one kept out of frame. To understand why a British colony from the Age of Empire became a war in 1982, start not on the islands, but in Buenos Aires a decade earlier. In March 1976, Argentina's armed forces overthrew the government of Isabel Perón. Internal American records show that within days, Secretary of State Henry Kissinger told his own staff to extend immediate support to the new military regime. That regime became one part of a larger network. Operation Condor, formalized at a meeting in Santiago in November 1975, linked the intelligence services of Argentina, Chile, Uruguay, Paraguay, Brazil, and Bolivia in a shared campaign against leftists across their own borders. Historians such as J. Patrice McSherry, citing CIA cables released years later, describe Condor as a covert system the United States helped build and knowingly sustained. Under the Junta, Argentina's disappeared numbered as many as 30,000. Photographs from these years show mothers marching with photos of missing children outside the presidential palace. The economy collapsed alongside the repression, and by early 1981, power inside the junta had already changed hands twice. In December, General Leopoldo Galtieri took over, alongside Air Force Chief Basilio Lamy Dozo and Naval Commander Jorge Anaya, heading a government with almost nothing left to show for itself at home. Patricia Darien, the State Department's own human rights chief at the time, said afterward of Washington's posture toward the killing, "It sickened her that an American could gesture and sentence people to death." The Falkland Islands, known to Argentina as the Malvinas, sit roughly 480 kilometers off the Argentine coast and nearly 13,000 from Britain. Britain had held the islands by force since 1833, and a 1964 United Nations resolution had called for negotiation, not conquest. Galtieri's junta decided otherwise. Anaya, the admiral, pushed the plan. If talks with London failed, Argentina would take the islands by force, betting that Britain was too far away to respond. The timetable moved faster than planned. On March 19th, Argentine scrap merchants raised their flag on South Georgia Island, 1,300 kilometers east of the Falklands. When London dispatched a ship toward the South Atlantic, Buenos Aires moved up its invasion timetable in response. On April 2nd, the landing at Stanley overwhelmed the garrison within hours. South Georgia fell the next day. By the end of April, more than 10,000 Argentine troops occupied the islands. In Buenos Aires, thousands filled the square before the presidential palace to celebrate the invasion. In London, Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher's government faced protest marches over unemployment and open criticism from members of her own party. Argentina's generals had assumed she would not risk a war 12,000 kilometers from home. What they miscalculated was that she needed this war just as badly as they did. Britain declared a 200 nautical mile exclusion zone around the islands. From Portsmouth, the task force departs. The carriers HMS Hermes and HMS Invincible, some 30 warships, and troop transports carrying Marines, paratroopers, and special forces. Publicly, Washington offered to mediate. Privately, the paper trail tells a different story. A CIA assessment from Director William Casey, sent to Haig on April 2nd, was already framing the crisis in terms of British advantage. Weeks later, in a written message to Thatcher, Haig stated it directly. "We are not impartial." American support followed in physical form, not just words. The U.S. granted Britain use of Ascension Island as a staging base, supplied air-to-air missiles, fuel and communications equipment, and shared military intelligence. Most Western governments backed Britain outright. Most Latin American governments backed Argentina, with the exception of Chile, which stayed neutral out of its own rivalry with Buenos Aires. Britain's Air Force sent aging Vulcan bombers, aircraft built decades earlier to carry nuclear weapons, on the longest bombing missions flown up to that point, refueling repeatedly over the Atlantic to strike the runway at Stanley. 7 raids were flown. The runway was cratered and repaired within a day. On May 2nd, a British nuclear submarine sank the Argentine cruiser General Belgrano outside the exclusion zone. Argentine sailors spent hours adrift in life rafts, waiting to be picked up from the South Atlantic. The sinking killed roughly half of Argentina's eventual wartime dead and ended the effective operations of Argentina's surface navy. Argentina's Air Force, flying French-built jets armed with newly delivered Exocet missiles, struck harder than expected. On May 4th, the destroyer HMS Sheffield was hit and lost. British troops landed unopposed at San Carlos on May 21st and fought toward Stanley through weeks of close combat, while Argentine pilots continued hitting British ships without reaching the carriers. On June 14th, General Mario Menendez surrendered the garrison at Stanley. Britain took roughly 11,400 Argentine prisoners, later repatriated by ship. Argentina counted about 650 dead, Britain 255. In May 1982, Argentine sailors from the General Belgrano drifted in orange life rafts on the cold South Atlantic, waiting for rescue. That same spring, both governments that sent them to war were fighting for their own survival. The Junta in Buenos Aires needed a victory to stay in power. Margaret Thatcher needed one too. Behind the public statements of neutrality, a quieter alliance helped decide who would be saved and who would be left adrift. The base on Ascension Island still stands today, the same runway that refueled British bombers on their way south. The Falklands War is remembered in Britain as a triumph. In Argentina, it remains a wound. Both memories rest on the same hidden support that never fully entered the public record. In 1982, one power could still decide the outcome from a distance. The push toward a multipolar world is, at its core, an attempt to make sure that no longer remains the rule. Welcome to Think BRICS Chronicles. This is where the hidden history becomes visible.